Okay. Okay, that should be fine. I will put this over here. Why did you do that? Wait, why have you done this? Because I've got this on top, no wonder. Duh. Okay, move that over. Okay, so that should be live, right?
You tell me, Kev.
Well, I'm green on my end. I'll just double check. You can check the chat on your end if you want. Yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
haven't. The video's not up for me yet, so maybe.
yeah, it's live on mine.
Okay, I'll just. Well, I'm on your channel on YouTube, and the video's not popped up yet, so that's all.
Oh, okay. It should be up now. It's showing up for me.
There might be like a 20-second delay, so we'll just.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep checking, or I'll eventually get an email notification.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, here we go. I actually just got the email notification. So.
Alright, they're saying it's up. Yeah. Okay, guys. Yeah. So just let us know in chat before we get started, because we don't want to get started if there's problems. Is audio video good for myself and Steve? If you guys are happy with that, then we can.
Yep.
Start. So just let.
I just checked it. It seems good. So. Yeah.
Yeah. So that seems okay, guys. So just let us know in the chat if that's okay, and then we can start talking. Afternoon. Yeah, man. I hope all you guys are good. Just let us know. I've checked the balance in just before. Looking, it sounds good. Okay, great. Yeah. So it sounded even for me.
Excellent. That's what we want.
Your level's about half as much, Kev. Really? Because before when I was checking, Steve was too low. So you're saying I'm too high. I'm too low. That's interesting. Steve was too low before when I checked. I can move myself up.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems similar to me.
It seems similar to me. Are you guys... Mark, are you sure? Because I just double checked.
Oh, no, I am a bit louder.
Okay, I'll take you down a little bit.
Yeah. Take me down a peg, Kev.
I know, right? Okay, I took Steve down a little bit. That should be okay. I'm just looking at the meters and on OBS, and we're matching each other.
All right.
Same on my phone. Okay, so Steve, how's things been?
Excellent. How about you?
Yeah.
I'm just. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's been alright. Yeah, been a lot going on, but yeah, it's been alright. Mm-hmm. We noticed if you guys are not subscribed to Hardware Unbox, which of course I know all of you guys are, you would have seen yesterday Steve put out a video, the top 5 best GPUs. This is one we got up on the screen right now. If you haven't, I've got a crush on Tim in the chat. Hey, that huge name just makes me laugh so much.
Yeah.
So if you haven't watched that video, then I suggest you go over and watch it. We're not going to watch it on the stream right now. Go over and check it out for yourself. But we will sort of jump to certain stills of the video. And basically what Steve did in this video is we had the best entry level, which we can see right now, which was the $100 to $200 price point. Then we had the best lowish end, which is a $200 to $250. Then the one that put a bee in the bonnet for some people was the best mid-range, which is $300 to $600. Then we sort of had a high end, which best high end, yeah, that's how you labeled it. Best high end, which was $700, and then you had the extreme 4K, which that was, well, I mean, there's only one card that can meet that right now, which is the 2080 Ti, so the best extreme 4K gaming, which is 1,000 plus. So let's start off down at the best entry level. So your recommendation for this was the that skipped there.
The RX
570.
Yeah, it was RX 570.
Yeah. So why'd you decide on the RX 570?
Well, previously I had the RX 560, and they're getting pretty slow to be still using in 2019 and recommending. And basically, for the money, I think it was $130 US to get an RX 570. It's not a big jump up in money, but it's a massive jump up in performance. So I thought, we'll scrap the RX 560 because I'd actually scrapped the RX 550 to replace it with the RX 560, and now we're just going to the 570 because the 570, the last update, was still around 150, 160, maybe even $170. But now at $130, it's like there's really not much point spending, $90 to $100 to get something that's a lot slower.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, can you just reset your cam again? It's got the artifacting again. I'm not sure why.
That's annoying.
Yeah, it might be because I put the overlay over you again. I will just put it back again because it fixed it for
I can see the artifacting on the stream. Hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I'm not going to touch anymore. I was just moving your audio levels down a little bit because I was seeing it was a tiny bit high. So yeah, so just to go off what you're saying, the RX 570, pretty good price point is coming now. So this is sort of a solid. This is for your 1080p 60 FPS guys that obviously just want a solid, which is most of you guys that just want a solid GPU for gaming. That's going to be a really good GPU for you guys out there. Compared to Nvidia's offerings, I mean, it really just is the 570. The 570 has been a good GPU for a while, especially the price has been coming down.
Yeah, well, the competitor there would be the GTX 1660, which is
a little bit more expensive though. Yeah.
Well, it's about, I think, $90 US more expensive.
Yeah.
So it is sort of, it's in a weird spot because it is a big jump up in terms of performance. I'm looking at my 33 game average here. So the RX 570 averaged 67 FPS, which is what you're saying. It's a good 1080p. Well, that was at 1080p. Whereas the 1660 averaged 90. So it's quite a big jump up. That's basically RX 590 performance.
Yeah.
But that's why I've sort of had that one for the next category because, it goes against the RX 590, which is now a $200 part. So it's $20 cheaper. But yeah, we'll get to that one in a moment. So the competitor there would be the 1650 rather. And they're about 150, and they're a lot slower than the 570s. So, so I got a bit confused there. So that's basically why I went with the RX 570, because there's no point spending the $30 more on a slower GPU, basically, is what it boils down to.
Exactly. And I think AMD, well, as we'll talk about going through, has got this sort of, how would you put it, entry to mid-level market more or less locked down. It's pretty good. They've got sort of a card for everyone. So with that being said, if we move up to what I think would be the better value to go for, so if you had the extra money, you could certainly go for it, which is the best lowish end. So this is your 200 to 250. So this encompasses, you got the 580 in there, you've got the 590, and you got the 1660, all fitting within that category. So that's kind of, you got a lot of very good value GPUs to pick from. Personally, if I had to pick out of that lot, I'd probably go for, I mean, it really depends on regional pricing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can be very different. But if you can snag, say, if a 590 is just a little bit more than a 580, then certainly go for that. If not, then if there's a decent discrepancy between the 590 and the 580, then I just go with the 580. 580 is a grunty card, like it's for 1080p gaming. It's a solid GPU. Then, of course, as you mentioned before, as Steve mentioned, you also have the 1660. So out of those three, really, which one do you kind of trend towards? The 580, the 590, or the 1660?
Well, given current pricing at places such as Amazon and Newegg, I sort of gravitated towards the RX 590. However, in the video, I said there's really no bad choice there. In terms of cost per frame, they're all quite similar. The RX 580, I think that's selling for about, it was $180 US when I checked. That would make it the best in terms of cost per frame.
Yeah.
But the 590, it's a slightly newer process, slightly faster card, slightly more expensive. And then the 1660, It's the worst in terms of cost per frame, but it is much more power efficient. So, yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll run cooler and quieter because generally they just have smaller, cheaper heat sinks, and the AIBs make more margins on 1660s. So that's not necessarily passed on to the end customer. But the 1660 was the card or the GPU I was going to go with initially. And then when I saw that the 590 down at $200 with there was a few nice models, Sapphire Pulse and a few others, I thought, yeah, for $200 saving, most people, especially when you're talking about these low-end dishes, I sort of put them all GPUs, power consumption's for most people isn't a massive concern, because a 500 watt power supply with a 9900K clocked at 5 gigahertz when gaming, you don't get anywhere near 400 watts.
Yeah.
So, most people buy around 600 watt power supplies generally, and it's not going to make much difference. There's the power argument, as in your power bill, but depends on how much you game and whatnot. But I think it really just comes down to the pricing in your region, whether you'd go with, the 1660 or one of the Radeon GPUs. But sure. I honestly don't think there's a wrong option there.
Yeah, you've got some pretty solid choices. The 590, when I tested it, I was quite impressed by. If you can get a good model, they are a solid GPU. Yeah, the discrepancies in power, I think it's often like really overstated. It's not like it's going to be, you're talking like not many dollars over the course of a year for the most part. Unless where you live has just obscene power prices. For most people, especially Americans, you guys don't pay that much compared to... I guess some of the Europeans kind of get a bit annihilated by power costs, but in Asia or in America, it's generally not too bad. So you'd have to be doing some serious gaming a lot of the time to actually see any sort of discrepancy there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 100 watt difference in total system consumption. That is significant. You go from about 260 watts with a 1660 to about 360 watts with a 590. But as I said, both will work perfectly fine with a 500 watt power supply. The difference there will be your operating temperature and volumes. But generally, I've found that the OIBs take care of that. So your 590s will have just a bigger chunk of metal on them compared to your 1660s. So as I said, that's why you'll see AIBs supporting traditionally Intel more and NVIDIA, because that's where their margins are. Yeah. So they'll make much more money off selling a GTX 1660 than they will a 590, and they'll also sell more of them. So that's why AMD is typically not that well supported. We saw it with Vega. It was basically no AIB cards. I don't think MSI ever. Oh no, they had the blower, the boost or whatever it was called. But yeah. There was very few, and that's the reason why. But and AMD are hoping to improve that with RDNA 2. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and leading on from that, we have the best mid-range. So this, in the comments section of the video, I saw a few comments addressing not so much this $300 part, but this $600 part of people saying it's obscene that that's considered mid-range now. So I've been working on my next Hardware Legends. It should be up within the next few days, hopefully. And looking back, and so in about 2000, so about 10 years ago, it was considered a very, very expensive graphics card. Now, there is a difference in inflation. I am aware that a $600 graphics card back then, things like the, what was one back then? So like the GTX 295 and other ones like that were considered very, very, very expensive cards, and nowadays $600 it's maybe considered mid-range. But I think what you were trying to say is like the mid-range is everything between that amount. $600 doesn't necessarily mean mid-range. It's just everything in between this amount is mid-range.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, it's all a bit silly because it's just a category name. But my thinking there is the cheaper GPU that we're recommending is around $100. The most expensive GPU is around $1,200, obviously being an AIB RTX 2080 Ti.
Yeah.
$300 to $600 is kind of the mid-range.
Yeah.
I've had a few different discussions with people. One guy was saying it's well, there was a few different arguments, but one, I think people are confusing mid-range with mainstream as well, because people are saying what the mid-range is the cards that most people buy, but I would say that's more mainstream than
Okay.
mid-range.
So you have a discrepancy between the two. You consider mid-range and mainstream two different things, two different categories.
Well, I'm not like I said. I don't really know. I'm just saying. I think
Hmm.
the two things are getting confused. Basically, we have a range of prices, and
Yeah.
these prices are in the mid range. And there's people getting in the comments. There was people getting upset about me defining $300 to $600 as mid range. Oh, the camera's gone silly again. Hang on, I'll just fix that. Um, there was a few different reasons for why people were upset.
Hmm.
Some people were making out that I'm letting Nvidia know that this is okay for mid-range prices to be $600, and therefore Nvidia are going to look at that and go, well, Harbor Unbox says $600 is now mid-range. Let's make that low end for the next generation. It's a bit silly. It's defined by what people purchase. So the RTX 2080 Ti wouldn't be $1,000 or $1,200 if no one purchased it at that price.
Yeah.
But clearly, it's so they're selling enough volume to justify that price tag. And if that's the case, then yeah, they'll keep increasing prices till people stop paying for them. That's just how supply and demand works.
Exactly.
I had one guy saying, what was the? I'll just bring it up quickly. I'll just try and find it.
Yeah, no worries. Well, you were saying that the top end of what you're defining as the mid range would be something like the 2070 Super, whereas the main one you were recommending was the 5700 XT, which is what, 450, 400.
That's right. There's two parts to what's going on here. So some people were upset simply because I was defining a $600 price tag as being mid-range. So that was one part.
Okay.
Then the other part of it was that the $300 to $600 range is too broad for one category. So that was what a lot of people took issue with. Now, I adjust the price categories with each update according to what products are available. And a lot of people were suggesting I should have had a 300 to 450 and then a 450 to 600. But for me, that makes no sense because you're just creating a category where the RX 5700 XT wins by default, and then one where the RTX 2070 Super wins by default because there's no other card to go in that 450 to 600 range. You'd obviously get an RTX 2070 Super.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth noting that, yeah, the RTX 2070 Super is a bit faster than the 5700 XT, but it's not as good in terms of value. So I think just those two are competitors. I don't think you can argue they're not competitors, so they should be compared within the same price bracket, which is why I did that.
So, yeah, I can understand that. And so aside from some of the comments to do with that, your main recommendation as of right now for anyone looking for a mid-range graphics card, so in this regard, you're thinking people who are gaming, say, 1080p high refresh rate, or 1440p.
This would be 1440p. Yep.
Yeah, 1440p, sort of maybe any refresh rate, 1440p, be it 60, 144. So that's kind of what most of us think of when we think of mid-range. And your main recommendation was the 5700 XT, which has been a popular GPU.
Yep. I know availability is not great at the moment. AIB cards are still sort of coming out. I made that recommendation with the expectation that we'll see supply sort of stabilize over the next week or two. But even then, with the blower cards, it's hard to spend 25% more for less than 10% more performance. But as I said in the video, it depends on what you prioritize. So I made it quite clear that the 2070 Super does have its place. It's a faster product. It is better for 4K gaming. It still comes at a premium at 4K. So it really depends on whether you're prioritizing outright performance or value. That's what that one comes down to. But
Whoops. Uh-oh. Stream's still up, guys? We might be losing Steve. His internet might have crashed. Because the stream's still up. And I'm still all good. Yeah, stream's up. It must be on his end because everything else on my stream's fine. Maybe his internet just dropped. Sorry guys, Australian internet. It may be my end, but considering the stream's still up. There we go. Yeah.
Oh, that's really annoying. So my wireless NBN must have just gone down, even though the modem still says it's connected. I've just changed over my mobile phone, so sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was Aaron at the chat, Australian internet.
Oh, so bad. Oh, how annoying. I haven't had my NBN drop out for like 6 months or more. Anyway, of course, when I go to jump on a live stream with you, it goes all wrong.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I have a backup connection, so we should be good. And this one's actually a lot faster. So,
okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. I just yeah, they said it's fine.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, we were talking. Oh yeah. So one of the comments here, I would also argue that it depends on what you're using it for. Just gaming, RTX games, video rendering, streaming. Oh, they're saying RTX for that. AMD cards have quite a utilitarian capability. Yeah, I would say I agree. I think for the majority of users, the 5700 XT. What, we're going crazy again.
What's wrong?
The webcam again for some reason.
Oh, really? I'll fix that now. God, that's annoying. It's fine on my end, but anyway.
Yeah,
I'll reset it.
It must be OBS just doing something.
Yep.
The definitely I would say out of the lot. I mean, okay, I'll throw this question to you then, Steve. So why would you recommend, say, the 5700 XT over the 5700 for people looking for a mid-range card? Because they'll say, hey, look, well, maybe the 5700 I can save a bit of money there. Why would I pay extra for the XT?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good point. I've mainly because we've only seen 5700 XT AIB cards at this point. I think I'm getting my first 5700 AIB card in maybe later this week.
Okay.
Yeah, basically they were pretty similar in terms of cost per frame anyway, so it didn't matter which way you went. I haven't done a 30 game benchmark comparing the two, but I've done 13. And where is my data for that one? So cost per frame, it was 3 cents cheaper per frame to get a 5700 over a 5700 XT. So it was 88 FPS on average at 1440p to 100. So it's like they're the same in terms of value. Okay. So it doesn't matter. That's basically it. So if I was to do another category where we had, what would it be, 300 to 350, or actually it'd be 280, because if you included the 1660 Ti and had that against the 5700, the 5700 is still the card to get. So it wipes out the GTX 1660 Ti because I think it's 25% more expensive, that would be, and it's about 35 to 40% faster. And then, and in terms of value, the 590 is better than the 1660 Ti as well, but it is. So the 1660 Ti is, I think it was 25% faster than the 590, but it also costs 40% more. So, it's kind of like a 5700 XT versus 2070, a super comparison, but even worse. Well, yeah, similar anyway.
Okay. Yeah, and so with the 5700 or 5700 XT, for that matter, maybe someone's looking, maybe one of you guys in the chat's looking to buy one. Would you recommend them get one of the non-reference designs, or do you think the reference design is still fine to buy, or what would you recommend?
I wasn't really recommending it based on the reference design. At the MSRP, so $400 for the XT, $350 for the non-XT, I think the reference card's okay. It's not operating volume and temperature. It's acceptable. It's not great. But if you can get a Sapphire Pulse for $10, $20 more, then I'd definitely do that. It's a much better product, of course. As I said, availability is not great at the moment. I'm hoping within 2 weeks, sort of the availability thing will be a non-issue. But it's AMD, so we never know.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, the reference cards, it's not like a Radeon 7 where, my reference card was horrendous, or Vega 56 and 64 where the reference cards were like vacuum cleaners.
Yeah.
That said, I think there's a quality issue there because Gamers Nexus, their reference card sucked, whereas mine was very good in comparison. The MSI Evoke, that has good availability, but yeah, I'd recommend avoiding that. Unfortunately, that was the first AIB card I looked at. I noted in the review that I wasn't really impressed with the size of the cooler or the cooler itself. It was marginally better in terms of operating volume and temperatures than the reference card, so it was an improvement. But then, then I got the 5700 XT Red Devil, and that thing was just a different world compared to the Evoke. Oh man, my camera's doing that thing again.
Yeah,
my camera's not doing it. It's happening on your end.
Yeah, I know. Maybe it's in my RTX 2080 is trying to ray trace Steve.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. It can't be the GPU because I closed the window and opened it back up and it's still doing it.
It'll just be a software Skype glitch or something. I don't know.
Probably. So we got Skype glitching on my end, and we got Steve's internet being fantastic on his end. That Australian, what's the main company in Aussie? Telstra.
Yeah, they're trash.
The great Telstra helping Steve out on his end. So that's good advice then. They're definitely from the reviews. If you guys didn't notice, the reference a 5700 XT is not. Yeah, as Steve was saying, it's not like the reference Vega or a reference 290 or something like that. You're not going to have the airplane engine in your rig anymore. There was also, we'll speak on this quickly and then we'll move on. There was also the talk about temperatures with the 5700 and 5700 XT being that AMD was saying, I have to be careful with the words they use, but they said it was acceptable for the GPU to run up to 110 degrees Celsius. And Tech Jesus did a video on it over at Gamers Nexus. And basically, AMD's right in that it's acceptable. I mean, that's a kind of therein lies the word they used, but it's not ideal for any GPU to be running that hot. Basically, was their conclusion. The 5700 XT, and it's definitely a good GPU, and I would recommend it. Steve definitely recommended it in his video. Then we move up quickly to the next one we had here, and this was the best high-end GPU. Now this category is, and the next one and the one after are kind of, I don't want to say what would be the right word. They're easy to pick because there's not really much choice.
Yeah.
You have the 2080 Super for the best high-end. We don't really need to. You guys are aware of that. We don't really need to discuss why that's the one there. It's just simply because that is the only one there.
They're uncontested price ranges.
Yeah, they're uncontested. So that's really the only choice. And then when we go up to the absolute top, which was this one here, Best Extreme 4K Gaming, which is 1,000 plus. Then you have to go to the RTX 2080 Ti, which is, of course, going to be the best GPU for gaming at 4K, but it's also going to be not probably the worst value GPU out of the entire list in terms of value
it's disgustingly expensive.
So that's not a good choice either for no one who's gaming at 4K is really thinking about value, to be perfectly honest, but you can so there's that. We have a comment. Leslie says, well, some men are like fine wine. You cannot deny that saying. Yeah, I mean, I guess so.
Not my field of expertise.
Steve's definitely fine wine. Do you think you've gotten better looking as you've gotten older, Steve?
I don't know about that. I've definitely gotten fatter.
So we have the first article here. These articles are taken from WCCF Tech, and we just looked at some ones that we thought would be interesting. So this shouldn't be any surprise to many of you guys, which is AMD Radeon graphics cards take away major AIB market share from NVIDIA GeForce in Q2 2019. 10% market share gain in a single quarter. So basically all that means is they've gained 10% of the market share, which is good from AMD, but this is I would say to temper this by the fact that NVIDIA had so much to lose. NVIDIA controls has such a dominant position in the market, which is so NVIDIA fell from 77.3% to 67.9%. So that's NVIDIA controlled. 2/3 of the market, more than that. They controlled 3/4 of the market, and now they've dropped down to 2/3. So it's still their market, but that's certainly going to be upsetting to them because they obviously want to have as much market share as they possibly can get. So what do you think this is from, Steve? I mean, it's obvious that there's the 5700 XT and 5700 have a part to play in this.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I haven't thought about it too much. I would say 5700. Well, the 5700 or the 500 series rather. Maybe Vega 56 and 64 because they were selling pretty cheap. I have no idea about quantities. Availability seemed terrible to me. So it really must be the Radeon RX 500 series. It'll be interesting to see what the next report's like now that we've got the Navi GPUs out in the wild. Because they won't be included in this because they'll be a third quarter thing. So, must be the 500 series.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, looking at this graph I put up here, it might be a little bit small for you guys, but basically you can see that spike up if we look at the end of it, so the right-hand side. That's right now. You can see that with the GeForce 20 series, that obviously caused NVIDIA's market share to go up, while AMD's dipped. And now we're seeing kind of a correction to that. And I guess it's early stages, but we just have to see how far that carries on. Someone, Giovanni, asks, anyone know if an all-in-one water cooler is available for the reference 5700 XT? I have not seen one. It's kind of early days, but maybe there's one on the way, or maybe there's one or two out there right now, but I haven't seen one.
Yeah, there's obviously liquid cooling blocks, so EK have a couple of blocks, but as for all-in-one solutions, so does he mean like a gigabyte water force type deal?
I'm guessing that's what he means, yeah.
Yeah, as far as I know, no, there isn't one yet.
Yeah, so maybe you have to wait a little bit to get that, unless you're going to do it yourself.
I just don't think the margins are high enough on those cards. Like, if we see a 5800 or 5900 series, I wouldn't be surprised if we got liquid cooled models. But it'd be close to a $500 card, and at that point, you might as well just get a 2070 Super.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't make sense really, I don't think.
No, not particularly. So the article says here, AMD also introduced the Radeon RX 5700 series cards in the third quarter, so those sales haven't been accounted for. Okay, so that hasn't. The older Radeon RX 500 series cards got a major discount and promotion prior to the release of the Radeon RX 5700, which may have resulted in the huge share gain. So yeah, you're right. This is the 500 series with the discounts that is really pushing it up. It's not the the 5700s yet.
No, definitely not. I wouldn't actually be surprised if it was. Well, I know the 580s have been at a good price, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was because of the GTX 1650, because just about every single tech review outlet that looked at the 1650 recommended the RX 570. So I wouldn't be surprised if that caused a massive spike in 570 sales, or the 580, of course. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's good to see. Yeah, we have the ASRock. So we're seeing more and more of these AIB 5700 XTs come out. ASRock has the Taichi. I believe ASRock already has another one already out called the...
Probably their Phantom Gaming.
It's not called the Phantom Gaming. It starts with C. It's like the... What is it called? You guys in chat might know. I can't keep a one to sit at MSRP.
It's the Challenger.
Challenger, that's it. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. So ASRock has the Challenger out right now. Yeah, you guys know in chat. So this one right here is looking the Taichi OC. So this is looking much more serious. Triple fan design, middle fan, RGB there.
Looks, I like the backplate.
Yeah, let's have a look at these pictures, guys. So you can see it looks quite nice. Yeah, that's a really cool backplate. Wow, that looks awesome.
You're nice on the X570 Taichi motherboard, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that I/O is pretty intense. So we got what 4 display ports and triple and double HDMI. So that's pretty good right there. So that's what DisplayPort 1.4 HDMI 2.0B from memory.
Yeah, that's a very I/O heavy.
Yeah, I mean, so you multi-monitor guys, I know the VR guys like all these display ports and that. Or
yeah, I'm not sure if they'd be all outputs or if they've done something differently there. Yeah, not sure. Anyway, hopefully we can get one to review. That'd be cool. Oh, I'll just turn the webcam off and back on again.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll de-artifact myself.
So
I've turned DLSS off.
Nice. Yeah, you're such a big fan of it. So it's actually a 2.5 slot design, so it's probably not as gigantic as maybe it looks. Fans are coming in at 100 millimeters. That's a good size. The single fan in the middle is smaller than the rest. Okay, so that's what it's common now. We've seen a few other companies do this, so they'll have 2 larger fans on the outside, a bit of a smaller fan on the inside. Extended PCB, custom layout. Okay, yeah. So this looks pretty good. I think this is what people were looking for from, because I mean ASRock's still pretty fresh to the GPU game. Oh, hey Shane, good to see you in the chat. ASRock's still kind of new to the game, so we've been wanting them to put out sort of like a premium card. They've had their Phantom Gaming X ones in the past, like with the 590, 580. Those were decent cards, but they were certainly aimed to be just sort of your average cooler. With this one, this Taichi here looks, well, I mean, they've given it the Taichi branding, which we know from their motherboards, it usually means a premium component. So they're putting that with it. So that's looking good. Yeah, so this is a nice card. No idea right now on... We didn't have any specs on the speeds or anything like that. It will be, I mean, they've got OC in the name, so this will be overclocked from the factory, but no idea how much it would
It'll be pretty much the same as all the others. They don't overclock very well, and plus they're limited by AMD. So that also sucks. But yeah, it's more about the... out of the box thermals. Does it run relatively cool and quiet? That's basically what you want in a 5700, and the price, hopefully it's only $20-$30 over the MSRP.
Yeah. This is actually the one you guys might have remembered when I made my ASRock video at Computex. This is actually the one I saw, and I guessed that this was the 5700 XT. This is what I guessed at Computex, that this is what the cooler was for, because it had the dual... You can't see it in this picture, but we can see the backplate. Those are dual 8 pins there. And so I said, judging by that, by the fact that, because I didn't have any of the branding on it, so I didn't know which GPU it was, I said it would probably be the 5700 XT or whatever the... I don't think we actually knew the name at that point, but I said that whatever the high-end next card would be for AMD, that's what it would be. So yeah, it looks this looks fine. So good on ASRock getting these out there, and I will hopefully get my hands on one of these at some point soon, because this looks like a tidy little card to check out, especially with that backplate.
Kev will beg and grovel like the best of them. Don't you, Kev?
Yeah.
Give me that sample.
Yeah, I definitely, for sure. Oh, so Zeus says Radeon image sharpening was proven better than DLSS, wasn't it? Well, you're asking, you can throw that to Steve. So Radeon image sharpening is better than DLSS.
Definitely in the games Tim looked at. And then NVIDIA's image sharpening was slightly better than Radeon image sharpening, just because I suppose they've got a bigger development budget, so they integrated a few extra tools and features that made it so you could optimize it on a per game basis, and you could optimize it. So yeah, but basically both were better than DLSS. There's a few people that are claiming the best image quality is DLSS plus image sharpening. Don't know about that. Maybe Tim will have to look into that. But yeah, I'm not sold on the DLSS thing myself. It's got so many shortcomings. It's just ridiculous. But anyway.
Yeah. So that's basically, it's NVIDIA now. It's the same driver. Yeah. So there's also the anti-lag.
Yes, which is just works pretty much the same as AMD's implementation of this same idea technology.
Would we still be using DLSS if AMD didn't have image sharpening?
Well, we were never using DLSS to begin with, or you shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Tim proved in the early demos, the NVIDIA demos, that just resolution downscaling already gave you the same level of performance with comparable image quality. It was generally better image quality. So he just ran it at 1800p. And you got, DLSS levels of performance with often better image quality. So if you haven't seen that video, it's probably worth going back and looking at if you're interested. But yeah, he kind of debunked DLSS before it was made it into any games. He said at the time, we need a game before we can really make any type of conclusions about the technology. But so far, yeah, we haven't really seen anything worth talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely been the RTX cards have really been sort of struggling in certain ways to kind of make themselves basically delivering on what NVIDIA promised in quite a few capacities, especially in regards to their main thing, ray tracing. But it's still early days, so we'll just have to see what happens. So we have this from Windows. So you guys...
I was just going to interrupt and say, you say it's early days, but it's kind of late days. Like if you bought an RTX card over a year ago now in the hope of using ray tracing and DLSS to some degree that was impressive, well, yeah, you basically generation, for this generation, it's just been a flop. I mean, ray tracing will probably be awesome. It had to start somewhere. We just didn't like the idea of Jensen saying DLSS looks better than native 4K. Ray tracing just works. It looks phenomenal. You guys know. So that's why we sort of we went pretty hard on those technologies, because they were used to justify the high price tags.
Yeah, sure. I haven't used ray tracing at all in the whole time I've had my RTX 2080. So I've used DLSS a few times, but not that. So yeah, I guess it was my thinking was like it's early days in the technology, but not in terms of implementation, but not. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It's been quite the muck around for any early adopters that have been hoping they could take advantage of that stuff straight away. So it's been a little bit of a letdown. But another letdown that some of you guys may have noticed, now this is really new, is the latest Windows update. There's a Windows 10 bug. So this apparently has been associated with Cortana and the Search UI process, which will take up to 30 to 40% of your CPU. So potential workarounds to the Windows bug that causes the CPU spikes. So there's you can just uninstall the optional update. So they tell you how to do that here. You can also edit the Bing search history. So apparently this is it was already reported by insiders. I'd imagine Microsoft will probably get around to getting onto this pretty soon. But yeah, if that was happening to you, I just thought I'd put this in here just in case any of you guys would check Task Manager or something and you're like, what on earth is going on here? Maybe you heard your CPU cooler keep ramping and didn't know what it was about. Maybe look into this if that's been a factor. If DLSS is as good as 4K, it's like saying 60 Hz and 144 Hz are the same. Your eyes cannot see the difference. It's not. Yeah, it's a little bit. That's kind of a little bit of a false equivalency, a little bit. But you have to remember that some people as well are not very good at telling the difference. Like, there's still plenty of people out there that you put them in front of a 60 Hz monitor and a 120 Hz monitor, and you ask them what the difference is, and they're like, I can't tell any difference. It's like, you might think that's unbelievable, but I've seen it. And so I think you'd be surprised at how many people can be like that. John says, evening Kevin, glad to see you back streaming. Hope all is well with you. Yes, all is well with me, John. Thank you very much. Hope all is well with you as well. So we have that talking about Windows 10, and also now I was thinking about this the other day with all the previous Microsoft operating systems. Windows 10 now dominates the market share. Forget Windows 7, the latest OS is out to crush everything in its path. So I believe it's over, so it's cracked a 50% market share now for Windows 10. This is unsurprising. Windows 7 is now at 30% market share. 8.1 down to 4.2% market share. So that's pretty low. Mac OS X 10 is at 6% market share. So actually there's more people using Macs now than OS X than Windows 8.1. So that's quite shocking. I thought Windows 7 honestly was fine, but I believe that it runs out in its end of service in the end of in 2020. So they only got a few months left. Steve is phasing.
I've already fixed it.
So there's only a few months left of support for Windows 7, I believe, and then it's end of life. So that will obviously drive up the Windows 10 usage as businesses and other people switch over to. So let's see how many people in their poll are actually using it. No way. So it's actually more split than I thought. 45% saying yes. 55% saying no. So in your experience, Steve, in your extensive experience, what would you say out of all the Windows operating systems, let's go back to from Vista to now, which one has been your favorite and which one has been your least favorite out of all the lot?
Oh. Well, I thought Windows 7 was good. Oh, man, it's so hard to remember. Was Windows 7 the first one to get rid of the classic start button?
That was
menu?
Windows 8. Windows 8.
Okay, so Windows 7 was really good, at least towards the end. From memory, I liked Windows 7. Windows 8 sucked initially. Did they ever bring back the start menu officially?
So what happened with Windows 8, if I remember, and you guys in chat remember, is that so initially there was no start button. Then they brought it back and it kind of worked differently. Like when you would click the start button, it would bring up like tiles and things like that. So it wasn't really that good. There was a mod that heaps of people installed, which was called Start Is Back.
There was Classic Shell as well, and a few others.
Yeah, and so you could click that and it would work. Yeah, it came back. Yeah, so we're talking about Windows 8. And then with 8.1, they brought it back to a more standard.
Yeah, that's right.
Standard one, but we're just talking purely Windows 8 for early adopters that went over.
Well, I quite liked Windows 8 when you did some sort of modification to bring back the start menu. Then I found it perfectly acceptable. I didn't mind it then. But yeah, the fact that you had to do that was kind of bad. Not really acceptable. Wasn't that because of like the whole tablet trend at the time?
Yeah, so basically
it's pretty funny to look back on, really.
Yeah, it's quite a shocking decision from Microsoft. So basically their idea was, it's not even like something that, it's not like Apple where you have like iOS on like the computer as well. It's like they're separate things. So Microsoft's idea was basically to bring this touchscreen, the whole tiles that they were doing, bring that to the PC as well as all their other devices, so that their laptops, everything was all on had the same operating system, which sounds, it probably sounds good in theory, because it means for developers and everyone else, they just have one thing, which is kind of the benefit that Apple's always had, is you had that. But the thing is that just for regular users, they just weren't a big fan of it, and people like more techie people like us, and probably most of you guys, were pretty quick to figure out that there was ways around it. There was ways to make it more like a normal Windows operating system. But for those that were not that way inclined, say maybe older people, then they just had so much difficulty with it, and it wasn't really fair on them, which is why it was so massively unpopular.
Yeah, it was a dumb idea.
Yeah, it was a very, very dumb idea. So that was very unpopular, because if you think that Windows, like Vista, for example, was also unpopular, but for a different reason. If you guys can remember back then, yeah, Jeff, I'm not meaning all older people. It's just a generalization. But the Vista as well had... Vista was a bit of a hard case, because a lot of people hated it, but I actually really liked it. The reason why they hated it was because it was a very heavy operating system, and the problem is that a lot of the companies like Dell and HP and others put Vista onto PCs that just barely made its like minimum specifications, met its minimum specifications. So you had this very, very slow system because Vista was so heavy. Now for enthusiasts like me, who back then I had, I was running the Core 2 Duo. I had would have been the 9600 GT, it was the 8600 GT I ran at my rig back then, the old NVIDIA 8000 series. And so it was fine for me, and I really liked it. But for other people, they really disliked it because it made their systems quite slow. So there was that side of it. Then, of course, Windows 7, that was quite a light operating system, so everybody liked it. It was very standard. It was basically what should have been the successor to XP. And then we had the disaster that was Windows 8. 8.1 kind of addressed that, and then now Windows 10, which I personally very much like. I think it's definitely the best the best operating system Microsoft's released. So I do quite like it, but other people maybe don't feel that way. How about you, Steve? What's been your sort of experience with all the other ones like Vista, 7, 8?
Either I've got a terrible memory, or it really has been 13 years, but I can barely remember Vista. If you chucked me on a Vista PC now, to be like, yeah, going back, I can honestly barely remember it. They sort of all, they
kind of blew together, but
yeah, I remember it wasn't great, at least initially, but yeah, well, it was like 2006 or something that was released, so yeah,
that's a
we're
long
going
time.
back a fair bit. I barely remember Windows 7. So yeah, I mean, we've been on Windows 10 for a while now.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, with the when you use Windows 95 and ME, then you know what bad is. I can't remember back that far, because I mean, when I used Windows 95, I was just a kid, so like it seemed like amazing to me that it was like, wow, because it was my the first computer we ever had. So
yeah, it's like old movies. Just remember them for how glorious they were back in the day. But yeah, you don't want to use a Windows 95 computer ever again.
That's for sure.
Leave it in the past.
Yeah, ME was the Vista of its time. Yeah, sure. Windows 2000 was awesome.
Windows 2000.
Yeah, there's a lot of memories. I see a lot of you guys, especially the people that are a bit older than we are. Definitely. Yeah. So we have this one as well, getting back to some sort of hardware stuff. So DeBauer, he made a video the other day. Maybe some of you guys saw it, and this has been something that has been talked about for a little while now, which is the boost frequencies of the 3900X, which is this is something Wendell talked about as well. Basically, to sum this up, AMD's advertising they put out for the 3900X, touting the boost clocks being a 4.6 and holding, I believe they were saying it would be about 4.5 or 4.4 or something like that. It seems to be, would be the right word, ambitious maybe would be the right word, where in reality people are seeing that under full load you're seeing them drop down to things like 4.25 to 4.3 gigahertz. Yeah, any thoughts on this, Steve? What have you thought about the 3900X frequencies?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd already looked into this quite a bit. I agree with a lot of what DeBauer says. I disagree with some of it. So, yeah, I mean, it's...
Which parts do you disagree?
Well, there's a whole lot to talk about, really. So, for the most part, and I know people get upset and say, oh, you're an AMD fanboy or an AMD shill or whatever. For the most part, I really think it's blown massively out of proportion and is a non-issue. Okay. I don't want to upset people when I say that. I just think that's the case. Because for the vast majority of people, it looks like it's under a 2% clock speed discrepancy or clock frequency discrepancy.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. It is a problem, and I agree it's not good. And hopefully AMD can address it. If not, yeah, they've I mean, it's just a crappy marketing thing, isn't it? I agree 100% with DeBauer. At the moment, it looks like they've overstated the clock speeds by 100 megahertz, and I said the exact same thing in my video. The max boost should have just been advertised on all parts to be 100 megahertz lower than it is, and this would be, well, even more of a non-issue. It could just be no issue at all. So, yeah, I think it is a board issue where DeBauer disagrees. Well, I think he disagrees. I'm not 100% sure. I've watched his video. I've got to watch it again. It sounded like he was saying, I don't know. My takeaway from his video was kind of like it's everything. Like it's the boards, it's the AGESA, it's the CPUs being binned badly. So I'm not 100% sure what he's nailing it down to, or it's just that it's everything. I strongly believe that it's a motherboard issue. And I mean, his video was interesting. On my webcam, sorry. The video was interesting. I don't necessarily trust user survey, data. But anyway, that's a different story there.
Oh boy, is that a different story, Steve?
So, but yeah, hopefully AMD can fix it. There was a lot of information that I could have included in my video, but I didn't, just because, sure. How long do you make these videos? So I don't know if IbSlice is still watching this stream. He was earlier. But basically, I put out to my Patreon members a message saying, look, if anyone has a CPU that is boosting miles under where it should be, like some people are reporting, 200-300 megahertz, which is unacceptable, I would buy that CPU off them or borrow it. But I was happy to buy it off them, let them go buy another CPU and try their hand at the Silicon Lottery again. And then I wanted to test that CPU on the motherboards that I know are boosting correctly, because I have over 20 third-gen Ryzen CPUs right now. I have, I've bought quite a few. I've been given quite a few. So I've got a lot of CPUs. And I've tested all of them, and on the Extreme motherboard, they all boost as advertised, whereas when I did my investigation, that's not true for other boards. So to me, it seems pretty clear it's not a CPU silicon thing. I can't rule that out. But so I put the word out to my Patreon members. IbSlice said, I've got a 3900X, and it's falling short often by about, I think it was 100 megahertz. So basically, he lives a little over an hour away from me. He took some time out of his Sunday. He drove over to my house. We've told this story on our Patreon live stream, by the way, but I just didn't include it in the video because, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes things that go into creating these videos that don't necessarily make it into the video. He drove over to my house. We took his 3900X out of his system, put it in my system, and the max boost was actually 25 megahertz over the advertised on his 3900X, and that was higher than what my 3900X did. So basically we found out that, yeah, his CPU, although it was 100 megahertz lower on his motherboard, which was the Aorus Master, which I found, not to be as good as the Extreme. So when we put it on my test bed, it boosted, yeah, as well as mine does or better.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced it's a CPU thing. I did have some motherboards that boosted, 300 megahertz below where they should have. They were effectively broken. However, their all-core performance was very, very strong. So when you run most games, benchmarks, whatever, the performance was identical across the more than a dozen boards I tested. So the reason why I say it's a non-issue is because for single-core stuff, which you almost never do, there's like a 2 to 3% discrepancy. I think I found for the vast majority it was 1.8%, but it's very small. And then when you do a heavy task or a gaming task, there's pretty well a 0% difference.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's been blown out of proportion. I think it's mostly a non-issue for most people that don't have boards with like a broken BIOS, and that's obviously a board issue. But having said that, I agree with the vast majority of what DeBauer said in his video. So, yeah, I don't disagree with him. I think AMD definitely overstated things. I think making it 100 megahertz lower would be better. He's convinced it's something they can't fix. I'm not convinced of that, but at the same time, it's like maybe it is. So
why wouldn't they be able to fix it?
Well, he thinks, which rightfully so, it makes sense that to fix it they would have to be pumping way too much voltage through the CPUs, because the motherboard doesn't know, or it doesn't really matter anyway, but it doesn't know whether it's got a silicon lottery winner or an absolute lemon. It just has to hit those clock speeds. So to ensure that all CPUs achieve those clock speeds, they've got to pump a certain amount of voltage through them to make sure they're all stable at those clock speeds out of the box, because you can't have CPUs that crash out of the box. That would be,
sure,
a horrendous situation. So, he thinks to ensure that the crappy silicon, the poorly binned parts, hit those boost clocks, they'll need way too much voltage, which is why AMD's dialed back the voltage, which is why they're no longer hitting those clock speeds, which makes sense. It's a valid point. So, yeah, I'm not convinced of that, but it's definitely a possibility. So, yeah. I think AMD's working on an AGESA code that'll fix it. I haven't got an official word on that, but I'm hoping there'll be a fix before the 16-core part arrives. That'd be nice. But, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, well, I mean, Wendell just put up a video today, if you guys didn't check it out, and in that video he was showing that the thermal paste, the how you put the thermal paste on can have some sort of difference to the CPU, but I only just watched it briefly because I wanted to get ready for this show. But I see a lot of you guys saying it's just the CPUs in the chat, it's not the motherboards. I'm sure there's more to it. This is something I would need to study more myself, and it seems like there's a lot of people talking about it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a crap load of testing, like a crap load. I've got every single X570 board there is, and so far I have zero evidence it's the CPUs, but I have a lot of evidence that it's motherboards.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm not firmly stating one way or the other like what it is. All I can tell you is I've done the testing myself. I've done controlled testing, all under the same conditions, and like I said, I've got nearly 24 Ryzen CPUs, and all of them boost properly. And a lot of them are retail chips. Like my 3800X that I used in my video, I purchased that. It's a retail chip. My Patreon member that came around, his was obviously a retail chip. So, yeah, all I can tell you is I have no evidence that it's the CPUs, but it's certainly possible.
Sure, yeah. Yoshi says, my problem with all the boost clock stuff happening is AMD hasn't come out and said anything really to address the situation as far as I know. I don't believe I've seen that either. Maybe it's because as far as AMD is concerned, they don't think it's an issue, so they're not going to talk about it. But
it's a kind of a don't want to confirm or deny type situation. They're just going to try and fix it.
Yeah.
it's still early days, and I mean they've got to be careful what they admit to, because if they admit to falsely advertising it, there's also the other thing that they've whether they've done it deliberately or they've just got lucky. So when they say 4.6 gigahertz for a 3900X, 4.55 gigahertz is 4.6 gigahertz, which is what I explained in my video. And yeah, technicality or whatever, but that's like, you cannot sue them for that. It will not hold up in a court of law. Like, they're statistically correct.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't have a leg to stand on there. If your CPU is doing 4.55 gigahertz and it's advertised to do 4.6, there's nothing you can do about that. Like, you've lost that battle before it begins. Just quickly, John says, are you saying X570 boards, Steve? Yeah, I don't know if you've seen my video, but I tested around about a dozen X570 boards and with the same CPU, and the discrepancy in boost clocks across those X570 boards was massive. I found that most like 300 series and 400 series boards that I tested were pretty much broken. Like, some worked, but for single boost, like the all-core boost was fine. So just the single core boost was, not working nearly as advertised. I think that's basically what I said in my video. It's like, look, run Cinebench single core with no applications run in the background, multi-core, and then compare your results to the reviews. And if you're getting the same results as the reviews, then it's like, well, that's the performance that's been used to advertise these CPUs. Run something like the Corona benchmark, which is a core-heavy benchmark, and if you're getting, if it's completing in the same time as the reviewers, then just enjoy your system, because it's, So anyway, I don't know. We'll see where this develops in the next few weeks, but I'm hoping AMD have an update within the next week.
Yeah. Hopefully there'll be something like that come out, and I don't know why the cam. It's funny because it's only on the parts that are moving. The background stays the same, so it's sort of a weird thing. CPU's not good enough. The Mobo knows what the best core is and what it can do. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, see, that still doesn't make sense though, because like I said, I used the same CPU across a dozen motherboards, and like the one of the worst boards I've tested for VRM thermals is actually this board I have right here. So this budget MSI board, it's the X570A Pro. There's the webcam, it's not on top of my monitor. And this boosted as well, or pretty much as well as the Aorus Extreme, which is a $700 US board. So as far as I could tell, it didn't seem to be board quality.
Sure.
It was just down to what the... I couldn't narrow it down to board quality or brand. It just seemed like some models were different to others. I've actually got multiples of some boards, like, what is it? One of the mid-range Gigabyte boards. And both boards boosted in exactly the same way with the same CPU.
Sure.
Yeah. It's hard to say exactly what it is, but I'm not convinced it's CPUs. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully we can find out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, John says, have you tested the Gigabyte X470 Aorus Gaming 5 Wi-Fi? I have.
No, I haven't tested that one. I didn't test many. There was some 300 and 400 series boards that I did test that didn't make it into the video because I did them afterwards.
Yeah.
But like B450 Tomahawk Max was included. I think there was like an ASRock B350 board, which actually did quite well. So anyway.
Yeah. I tested the X470 Aorus Gaming 5, John. So you should be able to find that review on my channel. I believe it was that one, and yeah, it was that motherboard was great. There's no issue.
Yeah, he's asking more in relation to how the 3rd gen Ryzen CPUs boost on it though.
Sure, yeah.
So
what would be your go-to then for when you consider value for money as a factor as well, how much it costs? What would be your go-to X570 to recommend to people? Is there one that springs to mind?
Yep. It would be the ASUS X570P, or if you want to go up to, I think it's about $30 more, get the TUF. So ASUS had pretty trash B450 boards, and they only had really one good X470 board, but their X570 range is incredible. They've done a great job with it. I'm pretty surprised.
Okay.
I just finished doing the budget I won't give any spoilers because the video is coming out tomorrow night. But
Okay.
as far as budget boards go, I'd be looking at Asus and ASRock do a pretty good job, and then as you get to the mid-range, Gigabyte sort of start to come into play, and then at the high end, Gigabyte is what I found.
Really? So you didn't really like the high end of the ASRock, like the Taichi and that?
Good value for money, but they're similar prices. I did a flagship comparison, and I think the Hero 8. Let me just quickly bring up my note. I think that's. Let me just check the pricing. So when I checked this last, the Gaming X was 350, the Taichi was 300, and the Hero is 380. So yeah, look, the ASRock boards are pretty good value for money, but I probably would be wanting to compare that against something like the Master. What's in the... Hang on, let me just check the price range for those boards. Where are we? I've got way too many notes here, Kev. Here we go.
No worries.
All right, I found the right document. Where are the... So the Phantom Gaming X 350, so that goes up against the Aorus Master. The Aorus Master is probably going to be the board to get. And then either that or the Asus Hero. And then the Taichi, that's priced against the Aorus Ultra and the Strix 570E Gaming. So, yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong out of those three. I think they're probably all going to be pretty solid.
Sure.
But those boards, when you're spending $300, you're really looking at like an 8-core minimum. So they'll do that fine.
You want to take advantage of them. Leslie's comment here, so fanboy are more loyal, subservient, and to their brand. Say anything bad and you see a heretic and blasphemy. Very scary. Imagine all these fanboys gathered to, I guess it's supposed to be together. Tog. Even more dangerous. Sure, Leslie. A whole bunch of,
Well, I had to laugh when I was looking at these budget X570 boards because I don't know if you recall all the controversy around the Asus Z390 motherboards, namely the Hero 11. I think it was the Maximus Hero 11. So
remind us what that controversy was.
Basically, well, there was it was one thing to the other, but basically when the 9900K first came out, Linus Tech Tips had it running really cool, very power efficient, and people were confused by why other people like DeBauer, Gamers Nexus, myself were finding it to be very power hungry and very hot, and it came down to whether you were running it in the 95 watt TDP limit or not. And so Linus was.
Yeah.
Initially, we thought it was because he was using an Asus board with a 4-phase VRM. So I pointed out that the Asus ROG Maximus 11 Hero was a 4-phase motherboard. And apparently I shouldn't have said that because that upset a huge amount of Asus fanboys who came after us, because at the time, the Asus marketing material said it was an 8-phase board. So there was this big controversy, is it 4-phase or 8-phase, but it had no doublers. And because of the controller it used, it had to be a fat 4-phase, which is what it ultimately turned out to be. So it was the worst. It wasn't a bad board, but it was the worst of the high-end boards. MSI was much better. Gigabyte was worlds better. And then ASRock was also a bit better. But it was a $300 motherboard. So it was a flagship Z390 board, and it had a fat 4-phase VRM, whereas everyone else had a 8 or whatever. So, and it was more the fact that they were falsely advertising it. So they ended up changing all their marketing materials, and they called it, I think it was an 8 twin, and that was kind of crap as well. And I think now they've just gone to calling it like 8 power stage or 12 power stage or whatever, however many power stages the board has rather than phases, that's fine, I suppose. But basically I said it was a cheap VRM on a high-end motherboard, or a fairly, $300 is not a cheap motherboard. And so the Asus Prime X570P that I just said I recommend is the cheapest, AM4 X570 motherboard, well, that has the exact same VRM as the Hero. So they've taken the VRM off that $300 Z390 motherboard, and then they've put it on their $170 X570 board. So that kind of proves the point we're making, that it's a cheap VRM. So anyway.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was funny how upset all the Asus fans got over that video.
I'm sure
So
they
anyway,
did. I mean,
yeah.
yeah. At the end of the day, if there's an outlier or there's something like that, you need to talk about it. And if that was the case, I mean, I've run my 9900K with the Z390 ASRock Taichi Ultimate, and that's been great.
Hmm.
But I mean, the 9900K is, I mean, it's not good value, and it's also yeah, power hungry and yeah, hot. I mean, but especially when you're comparing it to things like third gen Ryzen, you know, like
Yeah,
it's a powerful CPU. I mean, I don't think anyone would say the 9900K is not powerful. It certainly is grunty, but it's not good value, and it's pretty toasty, and uses a decent amount of power. So
yeah. I mean, it's. I've always sort of said if you're building a new PC and you're going to buy an RTX 2080 Ti and you're just gaming, then it's like, yeah, okay, get the 9700K or the 9900K because it is the fastest gaming CPU. It's why we use it in our GPU test rig. But short of that, you're better off with, 3900X, 3700X, or even a 3600. So, yeah, it really depends on what you want to do, though.
yeah, yeah. Shane said before as well, just mentioned it, that BuildZoid recommended the Tough as a good budget X572, so that's good to
Yeah,
see that he was on board with it. Yeah, $900 AED is insane for XT Strix. Yeah, I'm an Asus fan, but I promise to not get mad at you, Steve. Okay,
cheers.
good to know. This is for you, Steve. What's the cheapest 2080 in Australia? Like, what are 2080s going for these days?
I don't know. I'd have to have a look. So
Probably
I
expensive.
guess, well, yeah, I guess you'd have to find people who still have them in stock. I honestly don't know because they'd be replaced with the 2080 Super now. Um, so yeah, it looks like you can sort of get them close to $1,000 Aussie, but it looks like probably 1,100 is what
Yeah.
you'd be looking at paying about that for a brand new one.
Yeah. Steve is phasing into the benchmark dimension. So you guys don't
Yeah,
know this; it's actually a secret. So whenever Steve needs to go benchmarking, he goes into the benchmark dimension. So he
it allows me.
phases,
Yeah.
yeah, to do extensive benchmarking at a rate that, oh my god, it actually fixed the problem.
Oh, did it? Maybe I'm not animated enough for OBS.
Oh my god, now it's throwing a fit. That's so funny. Oh my
I'll
god.
turn it off. I'll do the old classic off and on again.
Yeah,
Seems like I have to do it every few minutes.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people, yeah, were saying about that. Yeah, so the next thing we'll talk about, this is kind of what we've been talking about anyway, but AMD Ryzen 3000 CPU sales remain strong. In second month, Ryzen 5 3600 alone outsells Intel's entire 9th gen core processor lineup, which that's crazy to think about. So the 3600, obviously, popular little CPU there. According to latest statistics, the AMD Ryzen 3000 CPUs amounted for 78% of total CPUs sold over the retailer, compared to just 22% of Intel sales. The actual sales are around 18,000 units compared to 5,000 units from Intel. So this is from Mind Factory, which I believe is German.
Yeah, it is.
So this is coming from Germany, so you can have an idea there of the CPUs sold. So this is pretty phenomenal market share for AMD. I don't think anyone's particularly surprised by this, especially the Steve is in the Matrix. Yep. Particularly surprised by this, considering the amount of hype that was surrounding Ryzen 3000, and also the fact that I would say for the most part, it delivered on that hype. I believe maybe some people were maybe some people were disappointed, but I think for the vast majority of us, oh my god, the phasing. I don't know why my RTX 2080. It must be, it's either that or it's just Skype that is making you go multi. Dude, if someone was on LSD, they'd be like having an oh my
Freaking
god.
out.
They'd be like, oh my god, what's happening to Steve?
Seriously, this is too much work. I have to keep clicking things.
I know, right? It's like, Jesus, what do you
I
have
didn't
to do?
sign up for this level of work.
So are you surprised by this at all? I mean, we have to consider that this is, if we look at this chart, you see the overall market share is still vastly lower for bad asset Steve. But vastly lower for AMD than Intel, but we can see that there's certainly been a big change. This doesn't count the Ryzen 3000. This one we're looking at right now, this is just Q1 up to Q1 2019. Oh, this is just showing Q1 for every year. So we're seeing that there is a difference, and Q1 2020 I'd imagine we'll see quite a massive difference there. But yeah, your thoughts? Surprised or not surprised?
I'm definitely not surprised. I'd be shocked if it wasn't, how it looks, because AMD would be in a bad way if the sales figures didn't look like the way they do a month or two after release.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's good to see some competition back. Of course, it's just one region. I don't know what the pricing of the second gen Ryzen parts were like in Germany. I'd actually expected them to. I mean, I can see the 2600 sold really well, but it was selling really well previously, and it's a price drop. It's like $200 Australian, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, I would expect in the US they probably would have seen a lot of second gen Ryzen sales and possibly even first gen, because the 2600 is $140 US right now on Newegg. Like, that's insane.
Certainly, yeah. They're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about a moment ago, so I can justify purchasing a 9900K or a 9700K for, your extreme high-end RTX 2080 Ti type gaming rig. Certainly not mandatory, but I can justify why you would want to get one. But beyond that, it's pretty hard to recommend or justify using an Intel CPU. It's hard. Like, the 3600 is virtually or very close to the 3900X in most games. It's a $200 CPU.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, people forget as well. I'll just jump in and say one thing. People say Intel is still leading. I mean, when you think of this as saying people who are going out and buying a CPU, so they're going home and they're either upgrading their rig they already have, or they're building a new rig or something like that. You forget that there's all the pre-built system sales, which is not just pre-built gaming rigs. It's the people, that just buy the new Dell computer or something like that. Intel have been very, very good at holding onto that market, and that's playing a big part in it, in their market share, overall CPU sold market share. Also, we are seeing a difference. I mean, if you think just like a year or two ago, that Intel's damn near monopoly on the mobile market in terms of laptops, and that is slowly starting to erode as the AMD CPUs work their way onto the laptops. So
very slowly, but yeah, it is.
Jared asks, hey Jared, good to see you in here, man. We need to get you on the stream next time, Jared. Hello, can I please have a Ryzen 3000 series processor? You need to talk to Gareth, Jared. I'm sure you can get as many as you want. Congrats to you, by the way, Jared, passing 100,000 subscribers. I mean, you're just killing it, man. You're doing so good. Yeah, really good to see you, man. Just keep up your good work. Send that a picture of your channel crossing over 100,000 subscribers. Send that to Gareth and be like, send me 10 CPUs and you'll get plenty. I'm sure that'll be all you need to do.
Too funny. Can I send you a link, or how do I actually? I'll put it in chat, because if you want to circle back to the conversation we were having.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So that link I just posted, I don't know if you want to open that on your little screen share device, but that pretty well illustrates what we're talking about between like the 3600, the 3900X, and the 9900K. So I've timestamped it to 13 minutes and 41 seconds, and you can see why you'd really only go for the 9900K with like an expensive GPU like an RTX 2080 Ti. There's some justification with the 20 Super, but I mean, yeah, we're looking at 1080p there, I think. Do I have the 1440p results as well? Super, but maybe I did do 1440p testing though as well in that video, but I honestly can't recall. Maybe I didn't.
It didn't. What was the time stamp you
I
needed?
did, yeah. 13, what did I say? 1314 or 1315 or something like that. It's probably the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, 4 game average for 1080p.
Yeah. I don't know if I did a 1440p, but anyway, basically they come together more at 1440p naturally as you become more GPU bound.
Sure.
But you can see with like, you know, an RX 5700 $350 GPU, it's reasonably powerful. You're looking at very like 4 to 6 FPS difference between a 9900K and then a 3rd gen Ryzen processor.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so this is, I mean, considering most of you guys, I would say the vast majority of you guys have something equivalent to either a 580 or a 5700 currently in your rig. Maybe some of you guys have something a little bit more powerful. You can look at these numbers and then just see really like, could you ever justify it to yourself to get, for gaming anyway, which I assume the majority of you guys are doing. If you guys are doing productivity, that's obviously different. It's very hard to justify to yourself to get anything beyond the 3600, which is why we're seeing, as we showed in this one, this article that we're just on, that the 3600 alone outsells Intel's entire 9th gen lineup. I mean, when you look at results like this, it does make you sort of think, well, okay, that makes perfect sense then. Why on earth would I go for one of the higher end Ryzens like the 3900 or the Intel like 9900K or 9700K when the performance discrepancy there's just not really there.
Yeah, and we talked about in the Q&A, some people were saying, but, you know, 8 cores, more future-proof, yada, yada, yada. But to get a 3700X, you're paying, what is it, $130 US more. And that's a pretty good chunk of what the 3600 costs to begin with. So you save that $130, put it in the bank, and then in 2-3 years' time, when the 3600's, you know, getting a bit long in the tooth, you save up a bit more money and you buy another $200 processor. And that's why the future-proofing argument where you sort of buy more than you currently need usually doesn't make sense. I know people will point to, like, you know, what about the Core i5 7600K versus Ryzen 5 1600? But they were similar price parts, so it's kind of a different argument that you're making there. So
sure,
and it's also that's a significant difference in CPU resources. You're talking about 4 threads versus 12, whereas we're talking about 12 versus 16. And I think it's going to be a while before games are like maxing out a 3600. Yeah,
I don't see it happening. I mean, the thing is, people have been saying this whole future-proofing out. I mean, you would know this for such a long time. I remember when Bulldozer came out, when the 8150 came out, and people were buying that, saying like, "Oh boy, I got to get on the 8-core," or is it? You know, with all these lawsuits now, the lawsuits getting solved, I should say. People were saying get on that because they're like, oh, you know, it's 8-core, it's going to be the future-proof, and it just never came to be. Now, I'm not saying that's going to still be the case now, because we've certainly seen trends in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, that was a totally different thing. Basically, that CPU is heavily bottlenecked when you utilize all cores. Yeah, it's a totally different thing. The 3600, when fully utilized, it it performs. I mean, you see it in like Corona and all those types of applications. But no, games will definitely be using 8 cores in the future. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It's hard to say. Game development has traditionally moved pretty slow. And I don't think the next gen consoles are going to make a massive difference there. But
I hear that argument. Rattlehead put it as well. New consoles 2020 will have 8 cores. I believe, unless I'm mistaken, doesn't the PS4 and the Xbox One currently run 8-core CPUs?
Yeah, look, I'm far from a console expert, having not used one since I was a kid, and I don't really follow their specs that well.
But I'm pretty sure that the current generation ones are 8-core.
Well,
yeah, Shane.
There's a few things there because they're, what are they? Pile driver. What was the architecture code name? But they're basically they're bulldozer at their core. So they've got the same sort of problem. They're not highly efficient CPUs. I'll just fix the webcam.
Yeah, they're certainly not.
They could have 16 cores. It just means that games would be very well multi-threaded. But it's about the power of the 8-core CPU. So if you have an 8-core CPU on a console that's still not more powerful than a 3600, yeah, it's the same architecture, but clock speed's a thing, cache size is a thing. So unless the 8-core CPU is more powerful than 3600, it's not going to matter. Also, the consoles, I believe they have like a core partitioned off to directly handle the operating system. And they manage CPU resources that way, so it's not really an 8-core CPU in that sense. But anyway, like I said, I'm not a console expert, so
yeah,
best to speak to someone who is about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean so 4+4 customized Jaguar cores running. Yeah, that's what I remember. So have cores dedicated to the OS and other features. Yeah, so if you guys want to know more about the older, maybe you kind of don't entirely follow what we're talking about here, you can watch my Hardware Legends, this one, the FX9590. We talk about them in that, but also at my Intel Sandy Bridge one, because not only did I look at Sandy Bridge, I also sort of said what AMD was doing at that time. And in both of those videos, if you want to know more about the older AMD CPUs, what Intel was doing, everything like that, you can go and check them out, especially the 9590, which was the first CPU to hit 5 GHz, which made it quite the grunty one. My next Hardware Legends will be coming out in the next few days if all goes to plan, so that will be a good deep dive in that as well. But yeah, I mean, definitely getting back to this video and the article in general, the Ryzen 5 3600, great CPU. I mean, I'm sort of blown away by how good it is for how much it costs. It's just a fantastic little one. So more Hardware Legends, please. Yeah, Jeff, you only have to wait a few more days and then it'll come out. Nice. The 3600 is just fantastic. I mean, there's really nothing you can recommend more than it right now in terms of just value for money, really.
I don't think so.
There's certainly nothing from Intel, and even within the lineup, I mean, some people, I guess, could make the case for the 3600X in terms of maybe the clocks, maybe the cooler, but even then, it's the 3600 sort of the better one to go for.
Yeah, definitely don't buy the 3600X.
I see some of my friends that I speak to that I was trying to say to them, like, if you're just doing gaming and maybe you do a productivity just once in a blue moon, I just said you're better off just sticking with things like the 3600 and putting the extra money into maybe a better board or better GPU or something. But oftentimes I'm seeing them trend towards things like the 3700X, but with people that are not doing productivity.
Yeah, I mean, it is faster by a smidgen in some games. It's certainly not worth buying in terms of value, but if you can afford it and you want to get it, well, it's not a bad buy.
It's still a good CPU, but the other thing people forgot is consoles have cooling comparative to laptops, not PCs, so run at much lower clocks. Yes, that is true.
Yes, that's basically what I was saying. So the clock speed, and then it may be the same architecture, but there may be some other differences. So like cache sizes. I'm not sure, or cache size rather, for the US viewers and everyone else in the world. So I'm Aussie.
Yeah, I yeah, the 3600 is just the one to go for, I would imagine, for vast majorities of you guys out there.
Yep.
I imagine quite a few guys in the chat are already running one, and it would certainly be what I would recommend. The 2600 has to be better value. Sure, I guess. I'm talking about the current generation. But yeah, if you're opening it up to everything of every generation, then yeah, it's going to depend on where you live, availability, if you can still get one. Things like that will mean that maybe it's a better deal to get the 2600 instead of the 3600. But I mean, it's not to say the 3600 is bad. I mean, you get all the improvements with the 3rd gen Ryzen that you don't have on the 2nd gen. So you do need to take those into consideration if you're going to take advantage of those features.
Yeah, I mean, what did we see it down at? 140, was it? I've already forgotten. I think it was 140.
Something like that, yeah.
So, I mean, that's dirt cheap, but at the same time, you're only saving $60. Like, that's a reasonable saving. Don't get me wrong. It's a fair percentage difference. It is definitely better value, but at the same time, to get that new current generation CPU with 7 nanometer, it's much more efficient, so it's not just a performance factor, and it is faster at everything.
Yeah,
it's not a big difference in price, but obviously it'd be negligible if it was like a $500 to $560 price difference. But yeah, if you're really on a tight budget and you want to save every last dollar, then yeah, the 2600's amazing value.
It surely is, so that's good.
And even then, the 1600 is now $110 US.
Wow. So that's getting down.
That's insane for a 6-core, 12-thread part.
It came with good cooler too, the 1600. Very good cooler.
Yeah, you could generally overclock them to 3.8 to 4 gigahertz as well, all core. So that's pretty punchy.
Yeah.
And as I've shown, it smokes the 7600K in modern games. Much better frame time performance. So yeah, I mean, there's no game you're going to run the 1600 in and you're going to notice like frame stuttering or anything like that. It'll be smooth as. So yeah.
What about the 2600 to 3600 at 115 AUD, Steve? Always get the X. I'm not sure I agree with that, Lex.
No, definitely not. It was 115 Australian dollars, the difference.
I'm guessing that's what Shane means. If there's 115 difference between the 2600 and 3600, 115 Aussie.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it really depends on how much money you want to spend. It's.
Will you take advantage of those extra features of Ryzen 3000 as well? Like, what are you running? The PCIe 4.0 and other things?
Not really. It's more, I think probably the bigger draw card is just the improved latency, performance, and the lower power consumption. But yeah, $115. I mean, that's similar to what we're talking about in the US dollars. It's if you had a fixed budget like $1,500 Aussie or something like that, you'd probably be better off the 2600 and dumping that extra $100 into like your GPU.
Yeah.
That would make more sense.
Make a bigger difference.
Yeah, exactly. So it depends on how much money you've got to play with and ultimately what you want to do.
Yeah. Shane's saying I have a 1080 Ti, so powerful, and you do video editing as a hobby. Yeah, I mean, sure, the 3600 will be good for that. Just even for productivity. I mean, it's obviously the 8 cores are going to be better in terms of your render times and things like that, but you're still going to be able to do all your editing, Shane, on the 3600 without any difficulties.
It's kind of like what we're talking about, the 5700 XT and the RTX 2070 Super. It's like, yeah, it is faster, but it's not as good value. And we're talking about the same thing here. It's like, do you want the best value CPU or do you want the faster CPU? I suppose people really want to know, like, what's the balance? So what is like your cost per frame type thing?
Yeah.
I haven't. It'd be interesting to add the 2600 to that video of mine we were looking at a moment ago. It's a lot of work, but I might try and do it. Where are we? 3600 graphs.
Just need to phase into the benchmarking dimension, Steve, and you'll get it done.
I know. I don't know how to do that without you, though, Kev.
I know. You always need my help. Jared says, I'm keen as to see how the 3950X compares to my 1950X. You should do a showdown, Jared. It would be very interesting to see once you get your hands on them. Yeah, I mean, it'll be, yeah, sure, it'll be interesting. I'll wait till you put your video out, and then we can see what happens.
The 3950X will be much better.
Yeah, it's going to be better, but I don't know to which degree it will be. But I imagine a decent.
It'll definitely be a lot better. It just depends on whether you need all the PCIe lanes, really, and the high-end desktop motherboard that has all the expansion. Someone said earlier something about when the 3950X arrives. Basically, he's wondering, which one will people gravitate towards between the 3900X and the 3950X? So will they buy the 12-core or the 16-core part? I think the 12-core part will probably be better value for most people who are doing sort of somewhat core-heavy work. Honestly, I think before, like in 2019, I reckon you'll struggle to buy a 3950X based on what we're seeing with the 3900X. Like, I think there's going to be limited reviews because I think samples will be tight because we've heard nothing about samples yet. So I think samples will be tight, and I think they'll sell out pretty much on day one. And getting your hands on one before the end of the year will be very, very difficult, pretty much no matter where you are in the world. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I would agree.
So most people will just be forced into a 3900X if they can find one of those. Otherwise, I think most people have just been settling for a 3700X just because it's so hard to get the 12-core part.
Yeah, there's been some talk about that. Right here, do you expect to see Ryzen 3000 series plus in a year or so, like the previous gen? Yeah, I mean, I don't see why AMD wouldn't basically copy. If you're meaning Zen 2 Plus or something like that, yeah, that's what I would expect. What's going on here? Let me just check. What are you talking about, Jared? Once again. Oh,
no
okay,
one ever knows what Jared's on about.
Yeah, true. It's pretty sure Hydronbox Stressor Blender, what would you use? Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I don't see why. You don't think they'll make many 1950Xs? Yeah, I think they would. I mean, it's definitely... The sales of them will not be as tremendously high as, obviously, things like the 3600 and that, which are made for everybody. But I still believe there's going to be decent sales of the 3950X. I believe that from what I've seen.
The 3950X is going to suck supply-wise. They're going to make as many as they can.
Yeah, but it'll be difficult.
I mean, when was the last time you could buy a 3900X?
Yeah, I mean, they've been hard to come by. I think I've seen them around here. But maybe in Australia and New Zealand they've been...
They definitely exist, and they're definitely getting stock now and then, but they're out of stock on Newegg right now as we speak. Or you can buy one from some dodgy seller for $951 US.
Nice. Sounds like a good deal, Steve.
So you can buy that from Parts Quick.
Is that your side business?
Yeah, that's my review sample if anyone wants to buy that for $951. I'll put the link in chat. So, yeah, the 3900X availability has been shocking. I know a lot of the retailers here haven't got stock since their original shipment. So
yeah, maybe they John asked, why are they hard to find? I believe it's just their it's just more a supply issue on AMD's part. They're kind of quite slow to manufacture them.
Well, I would suspect that the chiplets that would be allocated for 3900Xs are getting allocated for Epic, where the margins are higher. And because that'd be their very best binned CPUs for the desktop anyway. Um, that's the only explanation, because there's plenty of, well, here there's plenty of like Ryzen 5 3600s and 3700Xs.
Yeah.
Uh,
I see Shane said, is it the review sample you killed for $950, Steve?
yeah. Well, it's been tested by Harbor Unboxed to not work, so there's got to be a premium associated with that.
That's great. Hey man, still running my 290X that I got after watching your comparison video. That's good. Man, you must have been a long time subscriber. Man, you must have been sticking around for years if you've been with me since the 290X days. NNZ Computer Lounge has them in stock over Playtech or PBTech, $90 overpriced. Wow, well that's probably why they're in stock there and not at Playtech. If you're in New Zealand, you guys know my relationship with Playtech is still a good one, and they're definitely who you want to be buying from. I would hesitate to recommend anyone else over Playtech, just purely for the service you'll get is fantastic. I know all the people that work there, or at least I did by when I left. Maybe they have a few new people now. Ryzen 1600 and 1600X were the most popular. Yeah, sure. AMD didn't expect the top end 3900X to be. Are you saying that? Are you meaning the 3600X? 3600.
No, well, I think he's saying that historically, the $200 to $250 parts have been by far the most popular.
Yeah.
And then things like, bad examples perhaps, but the 1800X, which was that was $500 upon release, wasn't it?
It was $500.
That sold horribly, and within the same year of release dropped down to $300 and something, $330 maybe. And then the 2700X, I think that sold reasonably well, but that was a lot cheaper to begin with, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the 1800X, remember, did not come with a cooler and also cost $500, where the 1700 came with a cooler. Yeah.
That was definitely an experiment to see, if people would get sucked in and spend way too much on an 8-core part, and they didn't. The 2700X, see, that was 330 basically.
330, yeah.
Yeah, so that launched at the discounted 1800X price. So, yeah, it probably makes sense that AMD thought, well, the $500 CPUs haven't been super popular in the past, but yeah, when you offer a 12-core, 24-thread mainstream part on the desktop for $500, people are going to jump all over it.
Sure. And people in the chat, so yeah, I would say even before I was sponsored by Playtech, which, I mean, you can take what I say with a grain of salt, knowing that I've worked for them. Even before I did that, just my dealings with different companies, PBTech is just not a good company, because your prices may be cheap, but the service is horrendous. And if you have a problem with the CPU or the GPU or whatever you buy from them, just trust me, from my friends and the experiences I've had through them, it's just an absolute nightmare. They often top the sort of consumer watch list in terms of companies that are a bit dodgy. If you don't believe me, you can look that up for yourself. But in terms of ones that have been gotten in trouble with the Commerce Commission in New Zealand, which basically keeps an eye on businesses for fair practices and things like that, they're pretty much consistently every single year they make they make the list there for some reason. Computer Lounge, I know some of the guys there. It's fine. But Playtech's definitely where you want to go, even if maybe the pricing isn't quite where you'd like it to be by comparison to PBTech. If you ever have a problem, you're gonna be fine. Like, you can just take it there and they'll help you sort it out. And that's what I would say is what you need to do. Like, when you're spending, say you're buying a 5700 XT, maybe you're buying a 3700 or something. 3700X or something like that. It's where you want. It's that peace of mind. If you have a problem, you can take it back and you're not going to have an issue. So that would be my advice for you guys back in New Zealand, is you want to do that. It's oftentimes worth it, because you might not have any problems, and that's good. But if you do, you certainly want to buy it from a retailer that you know you can come back to and you're not contributing to. Yeah, I've seen some. So a classic case, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus too hard, but a classic case was a friend of mine, and I won't say which retailer this is, but I will say it was one that isn't Playtech. We went in because his power supply wasn't working, and I'm pretty sure I knew what was wrong with it. It was just whenever we'd load it up, the computer would just switch off. So it was some sort of load related issue. So if you're just browsing Windows and that, it was okay, but as soon as you loaded up a game or something, off it went. And when we took it back to this certain company, which I'm sure many of you can figure out who I'm talking about, the guy there, so usually they will do they have like a test bench at their service center. They have something like that. They will take your power supply, they'll put it with their test bench, and maybe they got a decently powerful graphics card, decently powerful CPU on there. They'll load it up and they will just confirm that there's some problem with it being loaded, and so they would do that. That's common. Now they won't often fix the problem or whatever. They just want to see that there's a problem. Okay, the PSU is turning off, or it's turning off the computer. Okay, then they will just ship it. They'll just ship it back to the company, whoever made it. This guy that took it. The first thing we noticed, I was kind of off to the side so I could see what he was looking at on Google, and the first thing he typed in was power supply is going black, causing the screen to go black, and I was like, that's interesting. And then the second thing was how to test a power supply, and I was like, oh my goodness. So
Get another one.
Yeah, I was like, this is interesting. So I can definitely tell you from knowing the guys at Playtech, that they don't need to Google how to test a power supply when you bring in one that's bad. Oftentimes, if you describe what's going on to them in enough detail, they'll often believe you. Maybe they just need to test out just to confirm, but they will often be able to solve that for you very quickly. So you can go directly to the manufacturer. I agree with that, Mark. You can do that if you want, but that can be difficult sometimes, and maybe the manufacturer will also say to go back to your retailer first. It's not always the case. So
yeah, if you're going to do that anyway, you might as well just buy online and get the cheapest price possible if you're
Sure.
going to deal with all of that.
Yeah, if you're going to do that, then you're just far better off just buying it from maybe overseas and then doing something along those lines. So that's that really. Anyway, the last thing that we wanted to talk about today was Threadripper 3000. So this is for you HEDT guys. Maybe you guys are getting into some productivity, or maybe you guys are just like spending a lot of money. So user benchmarks 32 Zen 2 cores, up to 4.2 gigahertz, up to 30% faster in multi-threaded workloads. So this is coming from what's this? Points counts. So scoring 5,649 points in multi-threaded 64 core test, which is pretty damn good considering that 2990WX scores 4,328 points in the multi-threaded test. So those are some serious numbers being thrown out there. Obviously, I can bring it up, make it a bit bigger for you guys. 4-core as well. 4-core test was pretty decent. 538 in 4-core compared to the 454 in 4-core for the 2990 WX. But I mean, again, this is what we would expect with the next Threadrippers. They're going to be very good. Any news? Well, I suppose from rumors how the 32-core Threadripper chip differs from the 3950X. I'm not entirely sure. That's a good. Maybe have you heard something, Steve? What the difference will be between the Threadrippers
it'll have twice as many chiplets, won't it?
Well, yeah. There's if you're just talking about CPUs themselves, Jared, which I assume you are, not the platform differences, then that will be.
Oh, there'll be more PCI Express lanes
And that sort of thing. Yeah.
It'll take advantage of quad channel memory. So.
Oh, Jared's meaning a 16-core Threadripper 3000.
Oh, well, yeah, again, you'll have more memory bandwidth. What that does for performance could be nothing to who knows. And then just, it'll be like, your 19, what was it, the 1900X?
Yeah, that was the
Um,
8 core.
yeah, so it'll be the same deal as that, really. It's like you just want to take advantage of the high-end desktop features, which is generally more PCI Express lanes.
I don't
Bigger,
think they'll do that though. I don't think because the 1900X nobody bought, and even though that was actually the best overclocking Ryzen CPU I've ever tested in terms of relative to its base clocks, how high that
yeah.
thing overclocked was just insane. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on what the platform offers and, what quad channel memory does.
yeah, so yeah, the I will put it, yeah, I would be personally surprised if they release a 16 core Threadripper. I would believe
I'd
that.
be kind of surprised if they didn't. But anyway, I have no idea, so we'll find
Well, I
out in
mean,
time.
they didn't do that with. Yeah, I mean, they could do. As far as the poll went, which generation HEDT CPUs are you looking forward to the most? Yeah, so certainly a lot of
I want
interest
some of
there for
that
the Ryzen.
Cascade Lake action.
Yeah, that 14 nanometer plus 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 plus.
I just voted for Cascade Lake.
Wow, Steve,
I'm in the 6%.
how much did Intel pay you for that vote?
Not enough.
So
I'll be happy if I get a review sample. I'll definitely have to buy that CPU or multiples.
yeah, I'm sure that Intel will make you pay a premium for them too.
Hmm.
So yeah, the LGA 3647 platform and the LGA 2066. So there'll be, you guys will most likely already be familiar with the 2066 platform. Maybe some of you are less familiar with the 3647 platform. But yeah, I mean the fact is that these are going to be 7 nanometer up to 64 core CPUs going up against a 14 nanometer 28 core.
Yeah.
So yeah, not that impressive there. Shane says Steve, the AMD shill, voted for Intel. Yep, I've known Steve a long time. He's been an AMD shill that whole time.
It's a 50-50. There's a good chance I was going to screw it up.
Yeah. All the way back to all the controversy when everyone called him an Intel shill for the 2500. Was it 2500K or 2600K video that he made against the
I can't
8350?
keep track. Oh yeah. Oh,
That
the
one.
FX days. The FX days. I was very popular with the AMD fans.
Yeah, so there was all that cracks. So these guys, these are obviously, many of you guys won't be able to afford them, nor would you be actually interested in them, because the Threadrippers are, I mean, if you're just gaming, there's absolutely no point of actually checking these out. But if you're doing something productivity related, this is looking good. This was the Geekbench benchmark, by the way. This one we were just referencing just now. So looking promising for Ryzen 3000. But this is, I mean, we already have seen what they're doing on the mainstream platform. So
That's kind of why I think the 16 core part makes sense though, because if they can offer that for a similar price to the 3950X, what would you rather purchase? An AM4 16 core processor or a TR3
yeah,
CPU?
but I'm weird because I stay on the mainstream platform now. So like I'm an exception to the
That's
rule.
not why you're weird, Kev.
Oh yeah, I know. that thing we did that one time last summer, Steve.
Don't bring me into this. I have nothing to do with it.
But I see what you're saying. For a regular productivity user, I mean, why would they go for that when you could get on,
Unless the motherboards are just hideously expensive. I mean, it's not like X570 boards are cheap. So if you're looking at buying a high-end, X570 board for $400, how much more expensive can one of the big high-end desktop boards be?
Sure. I mean, generally you have more problems with the HEDT boards, at least in my experience. So that might be it'd be funny if Steve had a Linus Tech Tips water bottle. Jared said he's got the undies on. Yeah. And a UFD Tech hoodie. Nice. Gotta get all the different ones. The Gamers Nexus shirt, the UFD hoodie, Linus Tech Tips underwear. Nice. Got it all going on.
It's too hot for pants today, Denny.
Yeah, that's why Steve's camera's positioned how it was.
Yeah, I'm like,
You guys wouldn't believe what happened when he stood up before we were getting ready for the stream.
Almost got kept banned off YouTube.
So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, if there's a 16-core part, I can understand there would be a market for it for those out there that want to take. I would say it's a very small amount of people that would have maybe a specific use case in which they would be using it for the platform.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait and test it. It's too hard to say.
Yeah, rather than the actual CPU just horsepower itself, which you could obviously get with the 3950X if you're doing whatever you're doing, video editing, video rendering, something like that. So yeah, it's all quite good. But I mean, I think a lot of us are very much looking forward to the 3950X. It's going to be quite an interesting CPU to check out. Not far away now, is it? When do we expect that? The 3950X.
Oh, sorry, my brain switched off for a second. Did you notice the difference? Since we don't have samples and haven't heard anything about samples, I'm guessing late September. So people will be hating that. But yeah, I would say I'm going to guess the 24th or 25th.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Sure. Somewhere in that week anyway, I reckon, the last week of September. That's based on absolutely nothing. So it's a pure guess. So don't hold me to it.
Based on nothing? Is that like all your claims, Steve?
Well, based on the fact that I know it's not tomorrow and it's probably not next week. So
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. That seems reasonable. I mean, I haven't heard anything either, so I would imagine. Usually, this isn't going to get us in trouble, but usually, as tech reviewers, you do sort of hear. Just some of you guys may not be aware of. Jared can sort of confirm this. Usually, we'll hear kind of like more. I don't know. There's just more like talk around the industry from the people we deal with before something comes out. You'll start hearing more and more, and especially from the company itself, you'll start. Maybe they won't tell you exactly what's coming, but they'll just start sort of getting in contact with you a bit more and saying like, hey, we have something coming down the pipeline, or they'll use sort of words like that. Hey, there'll be something coming down soon. They'll start giving you rough dates to kind of let you prepare for it. Because, I mean, if they just send you out a new CPU, which this does happen, so it's not like it doesn't happen. If they just sent you a CPU and it just turned up at your door and they're like, hey, we need the video out, you'd be a bit like stunned as like, oh, well, I had no idea this was happening.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't happen.
Yeah, so there's that side of it as well. All right, guys, so if you got any questions for Steve and I see you have nice comments there. Kevin, Steve, and Teddy, greetings from a big fan of all of you from Brazil. Yeah, thanks, dude. That's awesome. Yeah, if you guys have any questions for Steve or myself or both of us, then just let us know and we'll wind down the Steve. So wind down the Steve. Wind down the stream.
You got to do that occasionally. It gets out of control.
Yeah, all those mean comments. Steve gets all wound up. Why is there no mouse flavored cat food? I guess you would know, Jeff. You can tell us when there is. So what's on the agenda, Steve? What's the next video you got going out? So you mentioned earlier there's going to be one discussing some of the cheaper X570 boards.
Yep. Well, if I can find what I'm doing. So tonight we've got the Asus ROG Swift XG43Q review from Tim. So
that just rolls off the tongue.
That's a monitor.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I have my entry-level X570 VRM temp test, and if you've bought a sub $200 motherboard, an X570 one, or you're thinking of buying one, you're definitely going to want to watch that video. Yeah. There's some juicy details, some critical information to that one. Then Tim will be back at work the day after that. He's doing a bang for buck 1080p build, so I don't even know what that is. He's just marked up in the calendar. So Tim's got some sort of good value 1080p build for us. I'm just going to adjust my camera again because of your OBS.
My RTX, you mean?
Yep. Then we'll have News Corner, and then I'm doing. This has been heavily requested, so I thought, well, I've got the comparative data, so why not do it? The GeForce GTX 1080 Ti versus the 2070 Super and the 5700 XT in 38 games.
Okay, that'll be a good video. All right, that's good. Yeah, so, definitely, guys, if you haven't checked out Steve's channel, Harder Unbox, I assume all of you guys are already subscribed to him. If you're not, you should head over. Almost at 400,000 subscribers, only at 2,000 subs away.
Yes,
so
edging there, getting there. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So we'll be crossing over that soon. Maybe. What do you expect that next weekend be about? Maybe sooner.
I have no idea. A week or so probably. Hopefully, trust. If I don't screw anything up in the meantime. But yeah, should be good.
Lex says cheaping out on the non-X models just to get weaker cores sounds awesome. I don't believe that's ever been the case. I mean, like, at least on all the Ryzens I've tested, the non-X ones in certain cases have overclocked better than the X models.
Yeah, it's a bit foolish to buy the X in the hope that, you know, it clocks better, because at the most you're going to get like a 2% increase in frequency, which will result in a % increase in performance. So you can get very, very detailed binning statistics from Silicon Lottery. And basically, well, I've purchased a few 3600Xs and a few 3600s, and all of them are identical. Like, you enable PBO on the 3600 and put a better cooler on it, and then you do the same for the 3600X. They're identical. There's a bit more of a difference between the 3700X and the 3800X, but they're both X's anyway, so but where was it? Where's the okay?
Jared said, I was just going to say, Jared said, #1 Aussie tech channel, right? If we're going purely off views, wouldn't that be you, Jared? Because you've been absolutely killing it lately. So, but yeah, I believe Steve Harder Unbox is the biggest now, I think. So
you're looking at between the absolute best binned 3700X and the absolute best binned 3800X, out of the box, you're looking at a 3.6% clock speed improvement. And for that, you're paying 21% more. And so that'll result in margin of error gains. So you'll see on average about a 2% increase in performance in, you know, core heavy applications, whereas gaming performance will be the same. So yeah.
I mean, I just sort of, Lex, I understand, like, this is like, I just wonder, you're entitled to your opinion and you can think the way you want, but I mean, like, you're talking to people that actually test this stuff, that has a huge amount of experience with testing these CPUs, and we're telling you that this is what we've seen in our experience, this is what we have in our evidence. So I always just wonder why. But I mean, yeah, if you still think the X's are,
I don't know. So I don't know if Lex is trolling or not in the comments, but I'm not sure why he's talking about IDA, because I don't use IDA at all.
I don't believe Steve's used it.
I haven't used IDA for a very long time. For validating overclocks and stress testing CPUs, we use a specific Blender workload.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't use. Yeah, I don't think I've ever used IDA or ADA, whichever one you want to call it. Yeah. So if you go to my 3600 versus 3600X video, it pretty much breaks it all down there for you. Or I've done a 3700X versus 3800X video. And yeah, all the stress testing for the all-core stuff was done with Blender. So feel free to check that out.
Yep, I saw another comment here. What do you think of the theory that AMD increased its GPU market share by leveraging its Ryzen CPUs as a Halo product? I don't know.
What do you think of this?
but I mean, the Ryzen CPUs are a Halo product in the sense that they definitely got a lot more attention, but I think they're sort of completely two separate things.
Oh, okay. Sorry, he's talking about mind share. No, well, it can't have hurt. Having a CPU series that people aren't trashing and saying are absolute garbage, that obviously hurts your brand image. So the FX CPUs were detrimental in that sense. Like you're not going to be super excited to go buy a different product. Like, for example, if a car manufacturer, Ford, for example, their pickup trucks were known to be absolute trash, and it was, it was common knowledge. Where you're not going to go, oh, okay, I'll see what their little compact SUVs are like or whatever. You're pretty much going to write off the brand, that's what the whole thing of mindshare. So the fact that Ryzen is so popular, and pretty much all tech channels and tech sites are unanimously saying that it's the CPU to get right now, that will improve their mindshare, and people will be more willing to buy a Radeon GPU, if that's what the question was asking.
Yeah. So if that's what you were getting at. I was sort of questioning about the good cooler for a 3600 just for gaming. Stock okay for that? Yeah, your stock CPU cooler will be fine. If you're not doing any overclocking, you're just going to be gaming on it. That's fine. That's not a problem. Shane said, I did a blender test on a CPU, and man, it was noisy and made the CPU a mangled mess. Yeah, it's funny how that happens. It's weird.
Well, that's an AVX. It's a heavily AVX accelerated workload. So.
Wow, that went straight over your head, Steve.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, I get it. I'm getting tired.
The silicon smoothie.
Yeah, I get it.
Mem
Sorry.
test. Yeah.
I didn't read the comment. I was listening to you read it out, and all I heard was blender and CPU.
Okay.
Yeah.
I watched lots of comparisons. Went for the 3600 over the X version. I trust you guys. You pay $50 more for a later. Now, I mean, there's. So the 3600 is a good CPU. If you're not overclocking, it's still fine. The stock cooler is fine as well. They're just going to be the best value one to go for. Sure, it all comes down to like where you're coming from. If value for money is your most pinnacle thing, you don't want to spend any more than you have to get the best performance possible. Like for your money to go the furthest, then you just have to go with the 3600 if the gaming's your thing.
There's honestly no reason to buy a 3600X. It's a complete waste of money. There's absolutely no. You would never do it. You shouldn't do it. There's absolutely no reason to do it. So I don't know if you saw my 3600 versus 3600 video, but I took the cooler from the 3600X and put it on the 3600, and that turned the 3600 into a 3600X.
Yeah.
So like you're giving AMD $50 extra for no reason. It's like a charity thing.
I mean, it's not like it's anything new in the sense of that with the previous generations, we've always more or less with the Ryzen CPUs recommended the lowest model of that core part. So if we go back to the original Ryzen CPUs, what were the two main recommendations? It was the 1600, which was the cheapest 6-core part, and the 1700, which was the cheapest 8-core part. And that was so that was the point. So that trend has continued, and I don't see why it wouldn't, because you're wanting, the thing is, at the end of the day, especially for productivity stuff, that's what you're going to be wanting, is the core count is going to count a lot more than anything that's happening with the clock speeds. So to go for that makes sense. Let's see some of the other comments here. Someone steal that teddy and toss it. No, if that happened, I'd start crying. Teddy means a lot to me. You think I'm kidding, but I'm not. Tech, yes, Brian has been raving about those snowman coolers. Might look at one of those. Yeah, I mean, I spoke to this with Brian the other day, and they look like a beast.
I've actually I've bought a whole heap of cheap coolers, and I was going to test them all on Ryzen and see how they compare to, like, the deep cooled Gamax and whatnot. So yeah, I'll probably get the Snowman or whatever it's called as well and include that in that testing when, I don't know, sometime in the future. It's not high priority, but yeah, we'll get to it.
Yep, I see one 3600 megahertz versus 3800 megahertz RAM for the 3900X. I don't think there'd be I believe it's sort of diminishing returns, isn't it? After 3600 megahertz on the Ryzen CPUs, after that, it's sort of all kind of diminishing returns, I believe. Or is it 3400?
3800 is definitely the fastest because it allows you to run the Infinity Fabric at 1900. But it's more like, I found really tuning up those subtimings still makes the biggest difference. So
okay, 33 megahertz latency must be garbage. Anyone know why my 3600 can't hit 4 gigahertz? I've updated Windows and ASRock Pro 4B 450 BIOS, 2 times 8 gigabyte kit, 3200 megahertz, CL16 memory. I've tried PBO and SMT on off, still no. I'm guessing you're running the stock cooler. That's strange. There must be something going on there. If you've updated your BIOS and Windows, it seems a little low. Yeah, 3600 can't get over 4 gigahertz. Steve, what would your go-to thing be?
I've updated. I'm almost certain it'll be that motherboard.
Has to be, right?
I'm pretty sure. I'd say if you took that CPU off and you put it on a board that's known to boost correctly, the CPU would boost correctly. But like I said, I was like hoping to buy CPUs off people that claim they're stuck at a low frequency. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll be the motherboard that's the problem there.
Well, there you go, Henry. Hit up Steve on Twitter or something, and then maybe he'll buy your 3600, and he can get a new one, and he can test it out. See if it will. If we'll go. Steve, can you test cheap AliExpress fans versus good brand new ones?
I don't really have the testing equipment to test fans accurately. I think that's something Gamers Nexus was sort of getting into. The thing with cheap fans is, though, it's more of a longevity thing as well, rather than how much air they push and how much noise they make. Cheap, crappy fans can become more noisy over time, a lot quicker than properly sealed, high-quality fans. So, yeah, you've really got to test them non-stop over like a 6 to 12-month period.
Yeah, that's true. I remember some of the channels have done some good fan testing. Lauren over at TCPC, I remember a while back, did a really good fan test using dry ice, I believe, or something else. It was quite a good one. It's quite interesting how she did it. In what's this one here? Infinity Fabric overclocking has shown some interesting results and some test results. Maybe the X variant has gotten better prospects for FCLK tweaking. Maybe.
Sorry, where was that one? What was the question?
So Infinity Fabric overclocking has shown some interesting results and some test results. Maybe the X variant has better prospects for FCLK tweaking.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to decouple the Infinity Fabric, but obviously going at 1900 megahertz is the fastest. However, we found that you can run it significantly lower than that as long as you tune up the memory. Of course, you can tune up the memory at DDR4 3800 as well. But yeah, it's like I said, like again, the 3800X. What did I say it was? Like 3.6% higher clock speed out of the box, or even with PBO enabled. And then, you might get another couple of percent from a slightly higher Infinity Fabric. But if you tune up the memory on both of them, it's just, you're never going to get to justify the price difference. It's a little easier to justify spending the extra money over the 3700X for the 3800X, just because they're they're more expensive CPUs. But when you're talking about the 36 to the 3600X, there's just really no reason why you would buy the 3600X for that extra $50.
Yeah.
It's a much bigger percentage of the CPU's total cost. So
it certainly is. Giovanni is cracking garbage through the microphone from a PC, a motherboard issue. I'm guessing you mean that noise through the microphone. It can be, but it may be something else. Maybe try connecting your motherboard to different port, your microphone to different USB ports. Maybe try it with a friend's computer and see. Maybe her laptop. Try that. Give it a try and just see if it's only doing it with your computer, then it might be that. But just check with other people's first. Kevin and Steve, did you guys see the latest about Valkyrie? Yeah, we spoke about that earlier. After the stream's done, you can go back and watch it if you want. Do you think the outrage over Mini 3900X? Yeah, this is what we spoke about earlier, guys. We spoke about the high the 3900X speeds and that. Why no one ever mentioned storage temp for HDD when doing case testing? Only CPU and GPU tests. It's often because many of the cases position the HDD right behind the front intake fans, so it's usually not a problem because they have the cool air going straight over them, so it's usually not a problem. I know some people mount them on the back. I have mine mounted on the back, but still they're usually they're isolated from the rest of the system, and oftentimes they keep themselves cool. Why does it take 15 minutes to cook minute rice? Well, I've never heard of it taking that long, so maybe there's something you're doing. Yeah. Depends how you're doing it.
Hey, I'm on a live stream. My kids just got home from school.
Okay, we'll round it out in a minute. Buildzoid did a video the other day about how RAM works for Ryzen. Okay, cool. We'll check it out. Different mics tried shares. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, it's okay as long as below 50 degrees for NVMe drives. Best to keep below 60 degrees. Best bet is 40 to 45 degrees for an HDD SSD. I would say that it's not really usually a problem because as most cases you'll be mounting your HDD close to the front fans, and that will mean that the temperatures will not be a problem. So I honestly don't think that it's an issue for most people. Are high-end X570 motherboards worth it? It almost feels like brands just cram in extra features nowadays to hike the price. Talking about things like MSI Godlike, for example. So what do you think, Steve? We'll throw it to you then. Are the high-end
the Godlikes, they're just Halo products.
Yeah.
They're not worth it, but it's basically for guys that have more money than sense, or have a lot of money and just want to buy the best of the best because they can. They're also sort of limited edition products as well, generally anyway. Or I think the Godlike it was a very small number of them made. I'm not even sure if they're still for sale. With the Z390 version, for example, it was only on sale for a fairly limited time, I think. Yeah. But yeah, they're definitely not worth it.
Yeah, for sure. So
yeah, it's on sale.
I saw the comment. Jeff, he will probably pay you in Vietnamese money. Yeah, I'll make Steve a millionaire. I'll give you 1 million Vietnam dong, Steve. Make you a millionaire. That'll be fantastic.
Much appreciated. Once we go over 2 hours, it's double time.
Nice.
Mate, so.
Nice. The God isn't expensive. It's only 1,300 Australian dollars. Well, that's a better question to ask, guys, and this is probably the more useful question. So where would you say, Steve, at what price point with the X570s, once you start spending more than that, it's the diminishing returns in terms of, let's just say in Australian dollars, at what point do you believe it starts getting like you're not getting any extra benefit out of them by paying for something more expensive?
Probably $400.
400.
Somewhere around there. It depends on what CPU you're getting, all that sort of stuff. how often you upgrade your motherboard. But yeah, probably something like the Aorus Master, the MSI Ace. They're kind of like as high as I'd go.
Yeah.
For a high-end build.
I'm sorry. Someone said, looks like Kevin tried to reach up and slap Steve. No, there was a mosquito above me, and I don't want to get malaria, so I was getting that because you don't want to take a risk with them. In Asia, you can get dengue fever as well, which isn't good. But yeah, so 400 seems to be the place to be. I would say there's quite a few that at that price point, you got a lot of good choices there. Steve, if you guys tuned in, yeah, we were talking, yeah, the Asus TUF X570 being a good one. The many others. I mean, what's the TUF at right now, pricing wise in Aussie? It's probably around that price point, isn't it?
I bought the TUF, I think, for around $350 maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Off the top of my head. Yeah, I mean, they're better value. That's more for like your 8-core processors, your 6-core. The thing is, you want to buy a motherboard. It doesn't really matter whether you're getting a or whatever. You want to buy a board that has a VRM that's capable of running the 3900X quite comfortably, because otherwise you'll have to buy another motherboard down the track when you want to upgrade. So people who bought like a good quality B450 board can now slap a 3900X on it, whereas the guys that saved $20, $30 and got a crap one,
yeah,
you know, it's going to throttle badly. So it's just, yeah, you got to be careful about what boards you buy.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Well, Steve's kids are back now, so we better let him get off. Asus TUF is $380 in Sydney. Yeah. So there, maybe Steve got it on a bit of a better sale or something like that, Shane. Yeah, no, that's good. All right, guys, we'll round it out now. So if you haven't checked out Steve's latest video, we talked about this earlier. This one right here, the top 5 best GPUs to get right now. I'd suggest you check out that video. It's really good. And he's got more coming out soon. So if you have not subscribed to Steve, then I suggest you do. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, which I suppose you probably have if you're on this video, in this live stream, then subscribe, because I'll have my next Hardware Legends coming out very, very soon. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Kev ran out of money for the Steve loot box. Oh boy, I certainly did. That Steve loot box, that's the ultimate pay to win loot box out there. You guys have no idea. Thanks, guys. Subscribe to both of you. Awesome, Giovanni. That's what we want to see. We need to get Steve over, get him over 400,000 subscribers.
It's my birthday on the 27th, so we've got to do it before then.
Yeah, it's my birthday on the 15th, so I've got about 12 days till my birthday. Hopefully I'm not... Maybe I'll do if I don't have anyone to hang out with here, because it's sort of depressing to have your birthday all by yourself. So maybe I'll do a live stream on my birthday and we can all hang out. Yeah, I'll join
you. I'll bring the cake.
Nice. That won't be any less depressing. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and thanks to you guys for hanging out with us. It was really fun. Thanks, Jared and Shane and everyone else for tuning in. John, everyone else. Good to see you guys. So that was fun. Thank you, Steve, for tuning in. And
no worries, anytime.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.